for example, take the what they call the LGBT movement, the lesbian and gay movement, and people who are openly gay. Actually, I remember going to the constitutional reform hearings, and a lesbian representative of the community stood up and presented to the Constitutional Reform Commission. So while the impact is still there, you know what I think has happened too? People, because we're far more exposed to external media, and issues are being, and there's online and Facebook, and everything's out there anyway. I think people are getting less cagey and less cautious, but it's still there. And Maria, you're right. Yeah. It's still there, but my impression is that check us 10 years down the line, the impact will not be as great. I think we're getting more open as a society. Yeah,
I think we have gotten very open. And going back to what you talked about in terms of the focus.
Yes.
Our current affairs documentaries focus more on the rural, as you said.
Yes, well, back then, yes.
As opposed to more on the urban in the industrialized countries, the bigger countries. Right. Are we shifting what our current affairs focus is by focusing on the rural as opposed to the urban? Because you don't, a lot of the issues, since you have a concentration of the population in the urban areas, you would naturally expect that more of the issues would arise within that context because of the numbers.
Yes, and that's interesting because at central to this whole idea of the study is who produces the documentaries. So at the rural, because they were done by the Government Information Service, which of course would tend to want to focus on things that are maybe less controversial. And so to focus on the urban, you're getting to really gritty social stuff, which maybe one would want to not really deal with for obvious reasons. So because the Government Information Service was dealing with social issues from the rural standpoint, they had more time, their focus was more that. But then what was interesting is that they did find social issues that were a problem.
Yes.
And what I wanted to remark on in the study is that they didn't shy away from it. As they were open about it, they were balanced, because what I was saying in the study is that the people like the Government Information Service and Folk Research at the time, these were the places that had the resources to produce a documentary.
Yes.
Because that's the issue. That's the issue.
Yes.
Although I think if the private media houses gave it a bit more attention, they could do it. Maybe once a month, once every, if they thought it was that important, they could. But because it takes resources to do a documentary.
It's a lot of work.
Yes, it's a lot of work.
The
technical expertise, the expertise of the scripting, storyboarding. There's a lot that goes into a documentary. And so places like the Government Information Service would have that. And so because of that, they would then focus on the rural. But the point I wanted to make in the study is that even though they focused on the rural, the issues that we see in the urban are in the rural, maybe in a less edgy or sharp way, but there. And the documentary makers at GIS did not shy away from that, was open about these are the problems and so on, and ways to tackle the problem. So what I liked was that juxtaposition of the rural, the pastoral, beautiful, almost like paradise, but right next to it, poverty, lack of access to education, lack of access to amenities and so on. And then how do we deal with this? What I'd like to see, Clinton, though you're right, is more in-depth reporting and documentary making on what's happening in the urban of Saint Lucia, because urban Saint Lucia, frankly, getting a little frightening, but why? The why of it, yes. And so I'd love to see private media houses tackle that. Just one every 2 months or something like that. Wouldn't kill DBS or HDS like that.
It might kill them, because then you have to look at, seriously, the staffing is a major issue, because again, we don't have the proliferation of media in Saint Lucia, but whether you want to focus on it, because there are so many issues, not just urban, rural, sometimes there's such a mirror. I've seen so many stories that I would have loved to follow up, again, resources-wise, love to follow up on. There's a place in Saint Lucia where a small community, and there seems to be a lot of mental illness within that small community. Almost 80% of the people there are mentally ill.
So why?
Then there's also an issue where somebody was raising, is it an issue of inbreeding or something of that nature happening there? What is going on in that small area? Is that unusual? Is it the water or something?
I think with commitment, we could do it.
We can do it, but for example, I work with the media house, and I would ask them to give me that time to go off and do that, and it's like, where are your free stories for the day?
Okay, fair enough.
But there are funding agencies around the world that would provide money, financing for projects like this, especially
find them.
Not the other round. You just have to. You just have
Clinton.
to.
I think if media managers really wanted to,
I want to see Clinton's, a few more of Clinton's documentaries.
Yes.
Well,
you're stuck in the grind as well.
I'm in that. I'm in that grind. I'm not as independent. We want your views as well on the media landscape, what you think of media, what you think of the coverage of the media houses that we have. We have our number on the screen, so call in and join in our discussion with Ayodele Hippolyte and Maria Fontenelle. Now, coverage. I have serious issues, with coverage generally. I don't think that many of our reporters, go in depth. I tell people, all the time that there's a huge difference between a reporter and a journalist. Just by the title, the name, journalist, you are documenting what has transpired. You're making reference, you're referencing past events and stuff, and you're putting it into a present context. However, anybody can report, and I tell people, I give them the example. Almost anybody. You take a high schooler and tell them, okay, sit down and tell me what you heard, what you saw. Okay, this person said this, that person said that. And this is the depth of reporting that we get most of the time in our local context. How can that change? We spoke about education, but in addition to the education, how can we force people to change the way that they present, to put things in context and make it, more real, make it more meaningful to the population?
I think it starts with the media managers. It's not about the staff. I think media managers have to have a commitment to training their staff in the methods, in the techniques to get the kind of reporting and coverage that you're talking about. If you take somebody fresh out of high school or wherever and just put them to do the news, to report on events and so on, that's what you're going to get. You have not given them the tools, you have not given them the understanding, the background, the foundation to do the kind of coverage and reporting that you're talking about. So it must begin at the top. The media managers must see their particular agency or their particular station as performing a role.
That's very
sad. They have to see that. It has to come from them, Clinton. Because if it doesn't come from them, you can't expect it to come from the ground. Where's the basis for the ground? The media person, first of all, must be an intensely curious person. You must love to read and read everything and want to understand everything. Not everybody has that naturally. So if you're going to hire people, you have to look out for those qualities or build it within them by training them, sending them to be trained and let them understand. Only the media managers can do that. So it's not about forcing the reporter, the practitioner, whoever it is. It's about the media manager understanding the role, that it's not just about the ad sales, which we understand you have to survive, but do the media managers even understand what media is supposed to do, what role it's supposed to play?
I think that's where it's at, because media does have a social responsibility.
Exactly.
And the media person, I think sometimes even without training, if you have a media person who is curious, as you said, somebody who believes I could make a change, I could change the world, I could do something to make a difference. Sometimes a simple thing like, okay, I would send you to cover, there's they opening a footpath in Marsha.
Yeah.
Oh, then I would send you to cover that, but you say, okay, they opening a footpath, do I just report they opening a footpath?
Yes.
Or, oh my goodness, this is so fantastic, or no, this is really bad because XYZ is going to be the case. And that person will take it upon themselves to expand their story accordingly.
Or how many people, how many indigent people, how many
they will find something if they're interested.
Are being affected positively by, or the other way by this path. We have a call on the line. Good evening, caller. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Good evening, Clinton and your panel. Two
Good
questions. Have you all noticed how one media station has hijacked the Prime Minister and government information coming out of the Prime Minister's office? It is not funneled through DBS, Choice Television, or anywhere else. It almost appears that there is a new satellite on the moon beaming down government information. And it's very slanted. The funny thing is, everybody in the Media Workers Association is tight-lipped about it, because nobody wants to step on red toes. Number one. Two.
if I may interject, because I missed the first part of what you said. So I mean, just so that I can know and not miss anything, can you please repeat the first part of what you said?
Sure. For the last year, and even before elections, everything that the Labour administration had to send out was mainly sent through HTS. And the few times that they throw you the little softball to come and sit on Newsmaker Live, they give 10 stories to HTS. Has that ever occurred to you? Because it has to me. Has it ever occurred to you that you can write to the Prime Minister for 3 months and get a runaround to have one sit down, one proper interview with proper hardball questions? But on any given week, he would appear 3 times on HTS. And it's not sour grapes, it is the reality of it. Secondly, you speak of media workers going above and beyond to get the true story. But in St. Lucia, that does not work. Because imagine you're at DBS television and the news is brought to you by, for lack of imagination, Digicel. But there is a big scam at Digicel. Can you, Clinton Reynolds, honestly investigate it and bring it out without your executive producer coming down on your back? But then you don't run that story because that is our main advertiser.
Good points.
Yeah, I mean, these are... I hope you're not asking me that as Clinton Reynolds, because I know what Clinton Reynolds would do.
Clinton Reynolds, I always want your answer as the president of the Media Workers Association. That's what.
Was that?
I always want your opinion as the president of the Media Workers Association.
Well, I know what Clinton Reynolds would do.
No, I think as a communications officer, I mean, as a member of the executive of the association, I must say, looking at it generally, this is not a question that is faced by media in St. Lucia only. This is a question faced by media all over the world. We have the Old Boys Network, we have the impact of the people who are paying our salaries. It is a fact of life. Thankfully, though, I must admit, one thing I have really welcomed is the rise of social media. It has its downside. It has a really nasty downside. However, it does have its pluses in that it allows for some things to become topics of interest that otherwise would not be and people could not follow up on. But what he mentioned, I mean, Digicel can't fund sorry for lack of let's say the Cinderella company cannot fund everything and everybody. And I think if it really is a massive, dirty scandal happening in a company, that would somehow or the other come out one way or the other. At the very least, it will happen when the company collapses, if nothing else.
Well, I mean, when I was at the ABC affiliate in the US, you know, I mean, I would kick and scream, you know, because you know, this big business or advertiser, there's this story, and I'm like, so what?
It happens around the world.
And that's what I always tell, you know, managers. You need to draw a line between the news and the rest of the station. You treat your news department.
That's not going to happen in St. Lucia. It did not happen 15 years ago, and it's not going to happen now. I think, if anything, it is worse.
I mean, it as Ayodele said earlier on, you know, it's also up to the managers, and it's also up to the heads of the news departments. You know, if the news department heads, the news directors, the editors put their feet down and say, okay, you know, we need to draw a line. They listen.
But there was actually recently.
You and I know that's not true. That's just not true.
It is true because I have been there.
There's a station in the US where two news anchors actually resigned on air at the end of the news because they felt they were being hampered again by financial considerations, by considerations of the management about their friends or whoever is funding them. As I said, it's something that happens all over. But again, we come down to the media worker themselves. If you have somebody who is really understands their social responsibility, really is curious, somebody who believes in social justice, they can't take it upon themselves to push the envelope, no matter what the consequences.
And
but again, you have to develop that.
Yeah, there are always different ways of getting into it. There's the social media as well.
Right?
And caller, thanks for your contribution. Let me just have you just...
My first question, I would really like you to address my first concern.
Okay, we'll do so. Thank you very much, caller. Well,
I think it may. There's something to consider. I have not. Maybe for lack of awareness, I will beg for him to excuse me. However, he must consider the fact that I don't know how much he is involved in the media, but is it possible that the government is sending everything, but only HTS chooses to use it? Because not everybody would necessarily use everything the government sends.
I think he's making specific reference to advertising and their programs and stuff.
And can be guests on the programs.
And that might be true. I don't know what the reason is, but I think that
I can't speak to that myself.
That the government